So thank you all for coming and listening to this talk. I'll do some quick introductions here, both for myself and for the project and talk that we're about to look at. But the idea is last fall, I built this AI literacy website called AI Foundations. It started off as like a fun experiment to try and get up and running for people to get some quick wins with AI tools. So I want to talk about that. It's a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of best practices, lessons learned from my point of view for working with AI tools for the past couple of years. Because I did see this as really like a foundational and transformative type of technology early on. So that's been sort of my whole thing the past 2 years here. So a little bit about myself, and I'll explain why I am wearing a chef's hat here in just a second.
You didn't show the Muppet?
I don't have the Muppet, no.
I do.
maybe after. But my name's Kyle Fidalgo. I'm the academic technologist over at the law school. So I just learned that legal is going to be taken over by AI in our panel discussion here. I actually don't think that. I think it's the partnership between us with some literacy and understanding how these tools work. But basically, I manage and teach people how to use all the academic technologies and educational technologies at the law school. Among other things, it's one of those jack of all trades kind of positions. I also manage a recording studio and do some video production type stuff. I'm a hobby web developer. Some of that bleeds into my job, but that's not my actual job responsibility, which leads to the project I'm going to talk about today. I'm a shill for my CrossFit gym, CrossFit Tilt in Waltham. So come on out, check that out if you want. But recreational CrossFit is always fun. So I love doing that type of stuff. In the past 2 years, I've really dug into this whole generative AI boom. I'm a huge proponent of like AI literacy and competency. So providing workshops, training, professional development and stuff for faculty and staff, and recently started doing some outreach to students as well, because again, like the opening talks today, I really think that's super important. Like, I would actually prefer you not to discuss AI in the classroom if you don't have a little bit of base literacy yourself, because I think that could be a little dangerous potentially. And the good news is, it's really easy to get a footing and a little bit of intuition by just using it. Like, it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. There's some core like AI literacy principles I think come into play. I'm not going to talk about all of those today necessarily. It'll be more of like the story of how I built the site and leveraged AI as a collaborator and co-creator all throughout the process. The reason I'm wearing a chef's hat here too is because I've also had the opportunity to partner with some folks from CEDL recently to provide some custom assistant workshops. We're calling it the AI Test Kitchen, which is why I asked this tool called Replicate, which you can train your likeness and then get images based off of like reference images that you upload. So I asked it to put me in a chef's hat in a fancy looking kitchen here. By the way, I like using AI like all across my job responsibilities, personal use cases. I have a lot of fun with like creative use cases as well. So I'm fully bought into that whole aspect, and I fully understand all of the jagged edges and potential pitfalls of using AI as well. So I'm not blind to that. In fact, I'm very sympathetic to that. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of a balanced discussion about some of those aspects here. This is probably the only photo in this whole presentation that isn't generated by AI, so just keep that in mind. A lot of the images are created here. But I really think that AI does fit at BC. And a couple of these reasons that I hold dear and kind of like my own core values and principles here, I think can be mirrored when using AI with some intention. So like at BC, we value curiosity, intellectual curiosity, lifelong learning, caring about the whole person, and like using our human discernment, human agency in whatever process it is that we're engaging with. And I think that when you use AI, it can actually align really naturally with these core principles. If you keep that in mind, you can use that to actually engage with AI in a more nuanced, thoughtful, and intentional way, and then reflect those values back into whatever work product or task or project that you're collaborating on with these tools. So for me, like I said, like I'm really focusing on AI literacy and competency at the law school, but then broader BC now. And I think we are in a good place to actually prepare our community, not just to use these tools, not just say, hey, this is this new tool, use it, like we heard earlier. We want to learn how to use it wisely and with some discernment. And so I think we can do this through, again, like BC is very suited for this with like reflective and intentional use. We can root this in like awareness of what these tools are, what they're good at, what they're not good at. We can use it to instill our own values in it, not like work for the tool, but how can we get it to work alongside of us and with us with our intention and context in mind. And how can we keep it human-centered and keep our human agency throughout the process? Because I do think that's really important. And you get the most value out of working with these tools when you can keep that in mind. So I don't think AI literacy is just practical here. I think like when we do it well, we do it right, and we keep this conversation going, that we can make sure that it reflects the values that we want to see, both like in ourselves and our students, and how do we bring that out into the community. So that's my lofty philosophical talk here, but we're not here to talk about all of that necessarily today. We're going to talk about some AI first principles, some core like mindset shifts that you can think about when you're working with AI as a collaborative tool. And I'm going to do it through the lens of how I built this AI literacy learning experience. So it's kind of meta. It's like using AI to build tools to teach you how to use AI. I do that quite a bit. I have a lot of fun doing it. So you'll get some practical examples and ways to think about collaborating with these tools here. So real quick summary of this project. I built originally, I'll give you a timeline in a second, but the reason that I decided to do this back in November, every time I work with faculty or staff, and I'll do some individual consulting about how to use these tools, inevitably halfway through like our conversation, I just see like the light bulb click on and they're like, oh my gosh, you're telling me I can use AI for this? Or they see me start to like fire up a chat. They're like, wait a minute, why are you putting so much information in here? Why are you telling it this? You're talking to it like it's a teammate or something versus just like asking for a response from a tool. And I realized like my time doesn't scale so well. Like I can only have like so many 1 or 2 hour consultations with people. And I wanted to give other people like the ability to see those quick wins, understand like in a low stakes way, engage with AI and just get in there and start using it because that's how you actually learn things. And I wanted a guided experience to a certain degree with some like best practices and like AI literacy in mind. So I came up with this idea to build an advent calendar. And I'll just kind of show you what this looks like. So I built this app. Like I said, I do some hobby web dev on the side. And the idea was like each day in December, it would unlock these modules. And it kind of started simply. Like each little learning experience was just an image generated with AI and then a little task to try out. And it starts with something easy, just breaking the ice. Get in there, start using it. And then progressively, you try different things, some of them for fun, some of them are like little mini lessons. But you get to engage with AI and also think and reflect on how these tools are shaping us, basically, in the world. So it started there, and then I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but because I'm going to talk about the timeline in a second. But I wanted to make something like fun, engaging, low pressure, and allow you to just try stuff out with different AI tools, get some exposure to it, get some ideas of how it can be useful to you. Flash forward to after December, after this project took place, I knew that I wanted something that lasted a little bit longer, like a more persistent resource. So I turned that into this AI Literacy Foundation's website. Same idea, I just de-winterized it, so to speak, and took it out of this like advent calendar experience. If you want to scan the QR code, I'll provide links to the actual website and stuff later, but this will take you to the homepage. You can sign up with your Google account, and then it walks you through sort of a guided experience for learning about AI tools, how to use it effectively, how to collaborate with it, and stuff like that. So the story today is how I used AI to actually build this, and then the tips and tricks that I've just learned along the way from using these tools basically on a daily basis for the past 2 years. And I could go back to if someone was, Margaret, did you want to scan it or? Okay. So real quick, I just want to talk about some of the tools that I used, just at a high level. I'm not going to go too deep in here. We probably know like the top left quadrant by now, our normal chat assistants. We've got Claude, Google Gemini, which is available for us to use at BC, which is great. Highly recommend checking that out if you haven't. ChatGPT. Then I lean on some other tools for asset creation. So like images, even like audio, video, all kinds of stuff. But the main ones I use for this project, the Sailboat is Midjourney. It's one of my favorite image generation tools. It has a really nice aesthetic to it. But ChatGPT and Gemini both now have really powerful image generation models that can create almost any type of asset for like marketing, if you want to create images or ideas for like classroom uses, you can get some really cool stuff out of there now. The top right is a little more specific to this project, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk about like coding or actual like the nitty gritty there. But there's two tools that I use that are just like code editors that have LLMs powering some of the capabilities under the hood. So I can work with it, I can send it instructions to use, and it can actually go out and write entire portions of my website, like huge pieces of functionality. Or I could be typing it and then just occasionally be like, hey, like I need to finish out this function, just help me do this. And it'll just write it for me. But it actually edits like files on my machine, which is really helpful and powerful. So you're not having to copy and paste between a chat assistant. And then the bottom right is sort of just this miscellaneous area where I've got Perplexity. I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but it's an AI-powered search tool. It's really powerful as well, although the latest features in both Gemini and ChatGPT are kind of like swallowing that just based off the capabilities of like tools like deep research and things along those lines, where they can go do some more extensive research and report writing for you. But I did use Perplexity for this to look up basically like some of the coding challenges that I was encountering. And then the STT is just speech-to-text tools. This is more of a broad thing. It's not a specific tool, but using like advanced voice mode and ChatGPT, when I'm walking to work or just going on a walk, I can have a voice conversation about an idea I have and get concrete ways to implement that when I'm back at my desk or something. So really powerful use case. You can even just use like your voice transcription app on your phone and just do like a stream of consciousness, like, hey, I'm working on this thing this week. I'm trying to figure out how to organize this particular project. And then you just talk about what you're working on. You pop that into ChatGPT when you get wherever it is that you're getting to, and then you're off to the races. It can organize all of your thoughts and help you come up with an action plan to actually implement it, which is pretty sweet. Yeah?
What's the hexagon program?
This one?
Yes.
That is Cursor. Yeah, it's a web, it's a coding environment. It's a little more on the advanced side. There's some other tools that are more like low code or no code friendly, which plug for AI Foundations. There's a whole day on using coding and AI. So I definitely recommend checking it out to get some like practice and reps in with these AI tools.
Sorry, the Windsurf, is that paid or
Windsurf is paid. Both, like all of these tools, the nice thing about a lot of these AI tools is they still offer pretty generous free tiers for access to these things. But I do pay for, I personally pay for Claude. I pay for a personal Gemini account as well as the BC account. Luckily, my department pays for a paid GPT account, ChatGPT. And then I pay for Midjourney myself. I pay for Windsurf myself. So I'm like, I kind of, hide my eyes when I look at all my subscription fees to AI tools. But I think it's useful for me, especially in my position, to like have some awareness of all these different things.
compare? So I found ChatGPT, to do pretty well at coding with some coding.
Yeah.
We've never tried Windsurf, but have you ever tried both to do the same function and compare the differences?
Yeah, absolutely. I am always bouncing between different tools. My personal favorite model for coding is Claude 3.7 Sonnet with thinking. When you talk about AI tools, the naming conventions of these things is just wild. But the benchmarks prove it, and also just like developers using these tools, like generally they prefer Claude's coding capabilities. But I can either use it directly in Claude or ChatGPT. Some of the reasoning models like O3 or O4 Mini or something like that, they're much better suited for coding because they have a little bit more reasoning baked in. They can actually think through the problem first and then provide a solution, which typically works better with language models. And then the coding tools themselves, there's a chat interface inside of that, so it's still using those models under the hood. All the same rules kind of apply. And I'll talk about some ways to like get more out of it in a second. Yep.
Really basic question.
Yeah.
Tech. I'm assuming asset creation is just like things that you can make to put on your website.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be anything. I mean, it could also just be even documents, right? Like text asset creation. But here I'm specifically talking about images. So like, I mean, everything on this screen was generated with AI as an example. All my little icons, the image on the left here, representing a timeline. And I am always bouncing between Midjourney, ChatGPT, Gemini. Just kind of like sometimes I'm pitting those tools against each other to see which one I like the most. And sometimes I'm just using like my own expertise with understanding like what tool does what job better. But yeah, good question. Asset is just images in this case.
How much did Windsurf cost?
It's $15 a month.
That's it.
Yeah, so it's not crazy. I mean, that's kind of like the running fee for a lot of these. It's like $15 to $20 a month for these tools. So Midjourney, I think I pay like $10 a month. Windsurf is 15, and then all the other chat assistants are like 20. So yeah, so I've already kind of went through the timeline.
How
Yeah.
many tools do you think are out there right now? Like, you've been in the market, is there thousands of them already that are?
Yeah, there are. I mean, the ones that I've shown on the screen are kind of like the big names, the big ticket ones that most people are using. But also a lot of the productivity tools that we all use, like, I don't know if any of you use Notion, if that rings a bell. It's like, yeah, it's like a note-taking app that's got some other powers as well. But a lot of these tools, they basically already have like their productivity use cases, and then they're just wrapping around like another LLM to give some extra juice to co-creating with these tools. So like I said, I already kind of went through the timeline here. So now for the back half, I just want to talk about like core philosophy. What is it like to work with AI as a collaborator? And part of this image, actually, I'm just gonna tell a quick story because I thought this is one of my like wow moments working with AI. I asked ChatGPT to create this after discussing back and forth, actually getting some ideas for this talk. And I said, why did you create this image? Like what went into this? So it said, this image reflects how I perceive our dynamic, energetic, collaborative exchange between a thoughtful human, thank you, ChatGPT, and an adaptive and cheerful assistant, me. I designed it to be both symbolic and personalized with visual cues that suggest co-creation, curiosity, and mutual growth. And then the next piece, like I'm not asking for this, I literally just said, why did you choose this image? And it said, all right, here's some emotional subtext. It's not just functionality, it's fun and it's meaningful. That's why the robot is smiling and why you're mid-gesture. It conveys a sense of shared joy and problem solving, curiosity, and ongoing discovery. And it's a reminder of what we're building together is, in a word, alive. And that like, I mean, it gives me chills saying it right now, but like when I read that, I was like, man, this is so cool. So like, I don't know, there's this whole really cool reflective and back and forth quality that I think people miss sometimes when working with these tools. And I get that all the time, which is, I mean, again, it's part of the reason why I'm a big proponent of this, because when you use it in this reflective way and like ask questions and you're not just stopping at the output, you get some really cool experiences on the back end when you engage with these tools like that. So what does AI collaboration look like? For me, in this project, it just meant like bringing AI to the table early and often. I use it everything from brainstorming to building content, building the website, writing up the actual lessons for each day, reflecting on the work that I was doing, like how can I bring more meaningful and purposeful, intentional use of AI to like our community, stuff like that. Have it critique like my ideas and the output that we're working on together. And then the expansive nature of AI too, like leaning on it for that. It can generate hundreds of ideas if I wanted to, or I could say like poke as many holes in this topic as you can, so that way I'm bringing like the best version of this to my community. there is the practice of like balancing between my human intuition, expertise, domain area expertise, and stuff like that, and the AI capabilities. I wasn't falling asleep at the wheel. It was me bringing the right context at the right time, and I'll talk about how I do that in a moment. And then leveraging the AI's capabilities to help me bring that in a way that's most beneficial for this particular project. And it also looks like shifting your perspective from like a passive utility or software where you're just typing in something and expecting an output to shaping the outcome that you're looking for collaboratively together, working alongside AI. That's a huge aspect of how I get a lot of work, a lot of meaningful work out of using these tools. And it's something I encourage, like if you can think about how to do that, I think you'll get more out of the tools and more out of the output as well. So this looks like treating your time working with AI more like a conversation. It's dynamic, interactive, iterative, collaborative, like you're going back and forth. Don't be afraid to push back when it tells you something that you know isn't quite right. Don't be satisfied with the first answer. Go back and forth and then create a better product because of that. Another way to think about it, some people don't like analogizing this to like humans, but like think about it like a new teammate. You have to provide the right resources and context for it to be helpful and successful with you. I hear this a lot too, like people are like, oh, I'm gonna trick the AI or I'm just gonna give it some vague request and see how bad it does. I'm like, sure, you could do that and it probably won't give you a good response. But when you're actually trying to do work with it, you don't want it to fall on its face. You want it to be successful in working with you. So how are you using, again, like your intuition, discernment to give it the right information at the right point in the process so that it can help you out? And that also gets rid of some of the hallucination problems too that you hear about with AI, when you can like ground it in the conversation and context of what you're working on. So I'm not outsourcing my project to AI, I'm composing and orchestrating all this information and working together on the project with AI. And that means that I'm giving it good direction, I'm reviewing the output critically and evaluating it, and I loop it in at the process where it makes sense for me. So let's take a look at what a collaborative workflow looks like here. For me, typically when I sit down to start a project, a lot of times it'll start with an idea, but I'm sure a lot of you also have sat down with ChatGPT, you're looking at a blank text input and you're like, okay, what now? What am I even supposed to do with this? So maybe part of the process at first just looks like, hey, here's what I'm working on today, this week, here's what I find important, here's my title, here's like the audience I'm trying to reach. Like, help me think through some ways that you might be useful for me this week or something like that. So you could even just start there if you don't have anything ready to go. But for me, I had this idea. I was like, okay, I want to create this resource. I sort of have an idea of like the direction I want to go. Let's brainstorm together and come up with an action plan to do this. So me, the human in the loop, I have an idea. I sit down to have a conversation with my teammate, ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini. I kind of use them all interchangeably at this point because they're all very, very good. And they all have their own different sort of like flavor and way like that they talk with you and interact with you. Then we brainstorm, iterate, and refine on this idea together. And like I said before, sometimes that involves like a speech to text thing first. So maybe I'm going on a walk, maybe I'm driving to the gym and I get an idea, like, shower ideas, right? Like you always get the best ideas when you're not also consuming podcasts and YouTube tutorials or like reading, research and stuff like that. When you actually have a moment of calm, like that's typically when ideas come to people. So now you can just capture that and then you don't have to worry about it disappearing into the ether. You can actually like engage with it and elaborate on it. So that's one type of workflow that I often lean on. And just to expand on the brainstorming piece a little bit, an example conversation looks like this. So I implemented a new feature over the weekend, and I just want to walk through what this actually looks like. So this is how I talk to it. I fired up my, I use something called Super Whisper. It's a speech-to-text AI tool. It runs locally on my machine, so my data's not going off to the cloud or anything like that. I do pay for that too now, unfortunately, but it's like $7 a month, I think. Anyway, but it allows you to talk. It takes out filler words, and it actually does some like massaging to what you're saying. So it will do some formatting, like it puts things in bullet points, and it'll organize your thoughts into something that's a little more manageable to use. So I just said, hey, like I'm brainstorming this new feature for my AI literacy website. I'd love some ideas. It's more of a user experience enhancement than like a necessity. This isn't a core functionality. It's just some fun stuff I want to add to the site. Currently, when people complete a module, what I'd like to have happen is every third module, like you get a rain of confetti, just for some fun. Like make the learning process more engaging, add some delight to it. And then at the end of the course, maybe you've worked with like Duolingo or something where like you complete a certain amount of tasks or something, and then like the Duolingo owl flies across the screen and gives you a cool message. So I was like, let's have Baldwin fly across the screen. And when people finish the final day of this course, let's just add some like fun delight to it. So I'm talking to it exactly like this. I'm giving it like what I'm working on, a lot of extra context up front, because I don't want it to have to fill in the gaps. If I have it in my mind, I want to put it in the prompt so it can actually get that into the final product. This is just more implementation stuff where I'm actually giving like more concrete like web development products here. That's not as important. So that's the initial prompt. I put all that in, I hit go, it fires off. So the next steps kind of look like, all right, I'm going to review what this output looks like. I'm going to follow up on any items that I find interesting, or maybe I'm wondering, like, is this actually right? I should go research this and make sure, because I don't want, again, to fall victim to falling asleep at the wheel, but hallucinations are a thing, and especially in web development, when there's new resources that are being generated, or some of the stuff that I lean on, as they get updated, like the nature of LLMs, they have a training date cutoff. So that just means that it might be relying on old information that I would be working on in my coding environment, which means that my code would break. So I want to make sure it's using the most up-to-date information. Then the next step looks like one of the three things I've listed here. So I might ask for, hey, like, let's summarize this. I'm going to take this into a new custom assistant that I've created to help me with a specific task. Maybe I take it into a new fresh conversation to sort of restart the context of what I'm working on. And it also could look like maybe I've already done some work within that conversation and I like where we've gotten. And so another sort of workflow that I kick off quite a bit is then taking the output of that once it's in a state that I like and creating a custom assistant or system prompt that helps me get to that point earlier on in the conversation. So it will allow me to then take that output. I don't have to give it all the context of the project I'm working on, the format that I like, the types of coding environment that I'm working in. It already knows that. It's loaded up and it's sort of like knowledge. And then I could just say, hey, here's my idea. Here's the package that I want to use. Help me implement it. And then it gives me a much better and thorough response right from the beginning. And I'll show an example of what that looks like in a second. Yeah.
What do you mean by custom assistant?
It's like I planted you in here to ask good questions. Yeah, custom assistant is just a way that you can reuse prompts over and over again. So if you know you've got a task that's repetitive, or you're working on a specific project that has like guidelines, maybe it has a style guide or something like that, you can put a lot of those instructions into something called a system prompt and then reuse that over and over again. So inside of Google Gemini, they're called GEMS, G-E-M-S. And inside of ChatGPT, you might have heard of a custom GPT. I don't know if that name rings a bell. Claude has something called projects. They're all named different things. But basically, it's a way for you to like load up that information. You can even attach files as knowledge to it. And then it uses that to inform its work with you moving forward, which is really helpful. And I'm going to show some custom assistants here in a second, too.
It's kind of like giving your assistant just the background information.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah. And if you didn't have access to those, what that used to look like was you would just keep like a Google Drive folder or a spreadsheet or something of like all of the different tasks that you had, and then you just like copy and paste those as the first conversation, the first turn in the conversation with the chat. And then it would take on that persona. So like you can assign it a persona. You could say you're an expert web developer that is fluent in these languages, so on and so forth. So let's take a look at how custom assistants work now that we've explained it a little bit. So this is a workflow that I lean on quite a bit. And again, it looks a little bit like this. I'm engaging in this dialogue and code creation. I think to myself, I can repeat this, or if I know I'm going to repeat this process more than like a handful of times, I'm like, all right, I need to create a system prompt so that I don't have to do all this work up front to explain what I'm trying to work on with you. I can just get started with you every time I start a new conversation. So one of the quirks with using AI is it's really good at understanding how to tell itself what it needs to do. So you can just say, hey, I've worked with you on this product together. I really like where it's at. How can I ask you to get here from the beginning? And then it'll say, oh, that's a great idea. Let me tell you. And then it'll give you a whole set of instructions that you can use as a system prompt so that you can get there earlier on. So for me, I lean on a bunch of different assistants. For this particular project, I have a PRD assistant, which is kind of like technical on the coding side, but it's a project requirements document, and it helps with web development, planning, and implementation. So it basically provides a checklist for the feature set that I want to implement and how to do it. It's almost like you're handing this off to a web developer or software engineer. So it's geared exactly for that. So when I hand it to my coding assistant, it's like, yep, got it. I know exactly what I'm doing. Thank you for the checklist. I'm going to go implement this feature for you. I also leaned on this for creating content for the actual Advent calendar. So you'll notice if I go into here, like each of these days kind of has a similar structure. So as I was working through this, through all the different days here, I was like, all right, I kind of like this, right? I've got an objective, here's some tools to use, here's a challenge to try for today. Now that I've done this a couple times, how do I get you to just give me this output every single time? I'm working on this Advent calendar project. Here's my goal. Here's my role at BC. Here are the people I'm trying to teach. Help me come up with useful content every day. And then I'd bring an idea, maybe with some extra information about like the stuff I want it to include. And then I say, all right, you know the structure of an Advent calendar day. Now provide this information I just gave you in this format. And it does an amazing job doing that for me. So if I go somewhere around here, I'll just show you real quick what that system prompt looks like. So in Claude, I was using Claude at the time, and you can see I've got a bunch of different assistants here, but I had this Advent calendar assistant queued up. This isn't a lesson on how to use this feature necessarily, but under the project section, you've got the ability to create project instructions. So this is what a system prompt looks like, where I say, okay, you're an expert assistant specializing in designing engaging educational prompts that help people learn to use AI tools effectively. Your purpose is to help create structured daily challenges that follow a consistent format. It's for this site, AI literacy course called Foundational AI, even though I changed the name later, but that doesn't matter so much. I tell it what it's working on, and then I say, hey, here's your core responsibilities. You're gonna follow these instructions. Here's the formatting rules. You should always do these things. You should avoid other things. When creating challenges, you should ask me clarifying questions first about the target audience if needed. You should ask me different questions if you're unsure about the type of content that I'm trying to do. So I like to do this a lot with my custom assistants because sometimes you don't want it to make a guess or fire and miss, right? Like you want to work on this project and be successful together. So I would rather you not make anything up or make any leaps here. I want you to ask me first before you move on. But if you do, you should also tell me hey, I assumed this aspect of your project as we were working together. Am I right here? And you could literally just, in plain language, tell it that. You're like, if you do make assumptions, let me know so I know to check these things. And it will tell you that in the output of your prompt.
How many revisions did you have to do this 20 times to get the instructions correct, or is it just you saw something, okay, I gotta go back, I gotta check that?
Yeah, there's a lot of experimentation, and that's like another thing to just like adopt is that experimentation and prototype kind of mindset. And I would say, I mean, I probably spent maybe 2 or 3 turns of the conversation to get it here. And then as I was working with it, I would see like, oh, I don't really like how it gave this output. Hey, I didn't like how you did this. How can I tell you in these instructions to avoid this in the future? And then it's very small tweaks. So it's really crazy, like the types of interactions that you kick off. And it's really good at being like, oh yeah, you're right, I did do that. Why don't you add this into the instructions? And I try it out, like, oh yeah, it got rid of that, great. And then you move on. So it's much easier than you think. It's like working with a teammate. You're like, hey buddy, how can we work together a little bit better? And you can even say it as informally as that, and it'll probably do a good job.
So what you just said, I think, is you can also have it update its own instructions, basically, to work better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something I do quite a bit here. Then we've got, in the new iteration of the Foundation site, there's actually these custom assistants that I've included as part of the experience. So like if you go into one of these days, you can talk to a few custom assistants that I've created. One of them is GAIL, generative AI literacy assistant, but it helps you just like learn about the material for the day. There's a reflection assistant. Sorry if the text is kind of tiny here, but where you can like reflect on your learning. So you could say, hey, I'm on day 13. This is blowing my mind. Can we talk about this? And it'd be like, sure, let's talk about the implications of what this day means. And then there's also a prompt idea generator. So if you didn't know where to start, you could talk to this assistant and be like, okay, this day like sparked a bunch of ideas. Can you help me like think through how to implement some of these? So GAIL is one of them. It's and I also asked ChatGPT when I was working on the custom GPT for this, describe yourself, and I used the description, brought that into Midjourney, and then created the image of what GAIL thought it looked like, which was kind of crazy. Yeah.
When you say custom GPT, are you referring to the assistant?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of terminology. Definitely, yeah, stop me and ask if you're not following.
Is there a difference between the assistant and an agent, or is that similar? So
Yeah, I use those terms kind of interchangeably. Agent has a little bit more connotation to it in the AI world, where it's more autonomous and it will make decisions without you in the loop. So I tend to steer away from agent, even though some tools like Microsoft Copilot use it, even though they mean it's just a custom assistant. But yeah, custom GPT, custom assistant, system prompts, all of those things are basically the same thing. And it's just an instruction set. It's basically like a role description, almost like a job description for your AI teammate. You're like, hey, this is what you're gonna do. Go like follow these instructions every time. Yep, I built the reflections assistant as well. So all of these have that same system prompt loaded up. And the ones for the course also have all of the course content as well. So it's grounded in the information of the course. And I've directed it, hey, only talk about the information here. Like you have world knowledge, recall abilities, but like the people going through this course, you should only really like help them discuss and think through the ideas that are in this content. So it grounds them in the conversation. It's not gonna go talk about some other AI concept or something that I haven't talked about already. So that's useful for you as the learners going through this to have that sort of like grounding there for these custom assistants. All right, so we're gonna continue on with the workflow here. So I asked ChatGPT recently, their image generation is crazy good right now. So I asked it to generate a version of Baldwin here, kind of a cute cartoon character of Baldwin the Eagle. So I've brainstormed the idea. Now it's time to like ask for a summary so that I can pass this on to my PRD assistant, who is then gonna help me implement the actual plan. So the first thing I did was ask ChatGPT, all right, summarize my work. And this is exactly the prompt that I gave it when we were done working together. Let's summarize the key aspects of the project. I'm gonna hand this off to be iterated on further. Let's try the React Confetti package. This is more like coding specific stuff. Summarize the idea and the plan in a separate document so I can have everything in one place. Sometimes when you're going back and forth in a conversation, you like try out different paths. You're going off on tangents. When you're ready to like actually work on the thing, you want just to bring everything back together simply and easily for you. LLMs are amazing at doing that. So why not ask for the help? You've already done the work, like collaborating together. No need to put extra onus on yourself. Just get it to summarize it for you. And so what this looks like inside of ChatGPT, you could see my conversation here. So this was the beginning, brainstorming on the left-hand side. And I know the text is kind of small. So it gave me this plan, things to think through, actual code. And then I said, all right, help me come up with an image. I was like, this looks too scary. Can you come up with something more friendly? And then I said, so this is another important thing. Again, not a workshop on like the tooling, but ChatGPT and Google Gemini has this feature called Canvas. And what it does is on the right-hand side, it pulls out the work you're doing in a separate document that you can continue collaborating on together. So one thing this is useful for is you might, if you're probably used to this workflow where you're scrolling up and down through the chat. You're like, where did we work on this thing together? I can't find that one piece of the conversation. Well, you can tell it, hey, we're going to work on this project together, create a canvas, and it pulls out this interactive side component that it can then start editing and working on the project with you together. So I can actually like type in here. I can highlight stuff and ask ChatGPT questions about it if I wanted to. So this is a collaborative workspace now where both of you can work on the project together, and it prevents you from having to like scroll back and forth through the thing. You can also export it and like copy the text inside of a canvas. You can share it out. Super useful. So it summarized the project for me. So I took this summary into the next step, which was pasting it into my PRD assistant. I don't have a rhyme or reason sometimes with the reason I have like custom GPTs or assistants in other areas, but I leaned on actually the BC version of Google Gemini here with my PRD assistant. And what it did was allow me to simply say, hey, help me develop a PRD for this idea I have. And then I just paste it in, and it knows what I'm talking about because of the custom instructions I shared. So what that looks like is something like this, where oh wait, sorry, I already shared. This was the document. And it generates the project requirements document that I can then take over to my coding assistant. And I know I'm running short on time, so I'm gonna try and get through this a little bit quickly so you can get to lunch. But then when I'm inside of Cursor or Windsurf or like whatever coding application, I can say, all right, we're gonna implement the logic for this PRD plan. There's a lot of nice features in here where I can actually like tag documents, tag areas of my code base. So I can say like, this is the file, the feature confetti eagle.markdown. It's a type of file structure. I've got this modification that I want to implement. Use the latest docs, and it has a function calling capability where it can actually go out and search the web and bring in relevant information. So I tag the @web tool, and then I paste in the websites of the documentation that I want it to use. I say, hey, you burned me in the past. Like sometimes you hallucinate documentation. Don't do this. Use this website. It has the current updated docs. Use that to inform your coding capabilities. I've placed this image to fly across the screen in my app.images or app/images directory. Make sure you ask me follow-up questions prior to beginning that remain ambiguous to you. And again, this is like an easy, like very simple thing to just add on to like any prompt where you're like, hey, don't assume anything. Like if you're missing a piece of the puzzle here, follow up with me first before you start generating a bunch of stuff. So that way we don't have to like keep going back and forth. So you can see like the idea here, I'm orchestrating and composing content, context for these LLMs and then co-creating the whole project together. So the end results, which I'm happy to share with you here, looks a little something like this. So I told it every third activity, I want to see confetti. So when you're going through this AI Foundation site and you hit complete, every day that's divisible by 3, you should see a little confetti rain down. Woo, fun. So now I have to like go complete a couple days. When I get to day 24, if all goes well, and live demos are always a little scary, we should see Baldwin appear. So there we go. And then he gives you a fun little message like, you've completed the course, even though there's more days in this, but you know. And you can click to dismiss. So there you go. You know, it takes some time to get to this point where you've got all these teammates helping you along the way. But when you do and you're composing them all together, you're able to accomplish some really like amazing things.
Within that program you created, created AI Foundations, does
Yep.
it go over what you just talked about?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So that's why I was okay, like blazing past a lot of the foundational stuff, because yeah, you've got time like to go through all of this, really soak it up and work with it. But you can apply the same workflow to literally like anything that requires knowledge generation, or like we're all like, most of us are knowledge workers, right? We're generating content, we're writing up documentation, we're coming up and writing research plans, stuff like that. So you can get help like pitching ideas, coming up with ideas to work on. And then you can use your own sort of like value judgment to say like, where do I need to be in the loop and where do I need to actually do the thing? And then where can I help leverage AI to like, maybe I need it to ask me hard-hitting questions about like the types of work that I'm working on. Maybe I need to think about other perspectives. What am I missing here? And you can use it for like critique if that, you know, if you're not feeling comfortable with it generating the content for you, have it give you like that quick feedback instead, something like that. So seek input over getting the output. Real quick, if I could just finish up, I know we're running over, but you know, it's not all unicorns and rainbows here, right? So I asked ChatGPT to give me a children's drawing of like unicorns and rainbows, and it delivered. ChatGPT is on the right, Midjourney is on the left. I thought they both did a decent job. But a few words of caution, stuff you heard before. You do need to worry a little bit about like the sycophantic nature of AI, right? It's always willing to tell you how great your idea is, even if it's not all the time. I've heard this also called like the man's best friend syndrome, right? But a few ways to like prompt around that. You can just tell it like, I'm looking for critical feedback here. I don't need to be told like my idea is the best in the world. It's like, where am I going wrong? What are other things I should be considering? And again, like you build a little bit of intuition about when it's just giving you a complete glow up versus when you need to actually like trust what it's saying, which also leads into like the hallucination aspect of it. It exists, it is a thing. I run into it all the time. Mainly, the concern here, I think from like our perspective is it's really good for the domain experts. Like you know what's good, what's not, so you can quickly assess the output and be like, all right, this is looking pretty good. And it's really good for beginners too, getting up to speed. It can really tailor information to the level you're at. But there's this murky gray area where you're a little bit beyond beginner stage, you're not quite expert stage, it's hard to tell what's good, what's not. And I mean, I think that's still the value of like all the things that we know leading up to this, like the hard work of learning. There is some like drudgery involved. I forgot what one of the speakers called it earlier, but I liked the way he phrased it. But there's still that need to like keep that human aspect and agency in the loop so you're able to overcome some of these things. There's definitely a lot of like privacy and ethical concerns, especially like in industry. I mean, I work for the law school, so hallucinating case sightings and stuff like that is a big concern. I just saw another article recently where lawyers got slapped with like $20,000 fines for making up fake cases. But you know, that's just people being lazy, quite honestly, and not actually following up on the stuff that AI is giving you. You wouldn't, like, as an example from the legal standpoint, like you wouldn't just take a legal intern or a junior associate's word, like at what the deliverables are giving you if you were a partner. You're gonna follow up on that and make sure it's like you're putting your stamp of approval on it at the end of the day. So you should still be very careful about the kinds of things you're accepting from these tools. And then this is a little bit more like esoteric, I guess, but relying on like the implicit knowledge, like the world recall ability of these tools, all the stuff they see in their training data, versus like explicit knowledge that you hand off to it, so that it's much better rooted in like the context you're giving it. One example I have here that makes sense, and then I'll finish up, is let's say you're talking to like your favorite author. They wrote a book back in the 70s maybe, and you wanted to talk to them about it. They might have a general direction and understand like what they wrote in that book and like some of the character development and stuff like that. But when they're recalling it to you, they might misremember some facts, or they might misremember a plot point or something. But if you gave them the book and you said, hey, like these 2 chapters changed my life, can you read it? I want to ask you about it. they reread it, and then all of a sudden, like their recall is much more focused and honed in. Same thing is kind of applies to like large language models. They have all of this knowledge sort of like loaded up, but it's hard for them sometimes to be like as accurate as possible. But if you give them like a research paper to focus on, or you say, hey, go look at this documentation, or you feed it like your onboarding documentation, you're like, all right, you're only focusing on this when you're talking to new employees as a chat assistant for like answering basic questions, it's going to do a far better job at not hallucinating, not misremembering. So it's very similar to like we are kind of in that same aspect. So some quick final advice. My biggest thing here, like treat prompting like an evolving dialogue, not just a one-shot command. Keep an open and curious mind. Effective communication is like one of the key aspects of actually working with LLMs. Like, can you articulate your points effectively and communicate like as if you're working with a teammate? The importance of context cannot be understated, and that's just like all the information you're giving to the LLM to work with you. And then, you know, don't forget to have some fun along the way. So incorporating fun, goofy stuff like whimsy into like your projects, LLMs are actually pretty good at doing that kind of stuff too. So I'll provide some slides later. I don't have time to talk about this. But I'll just leave you with this question. If AI were a new colleague down the hall, what would you ask them to co-create with you tomorrow? Thank you.